You. Thank you for joining our virtual meeting of the CPATA Board of Directors. I now call the meeting to order. If you wish to listen to the meeting in French, you can access the simultaneous interpretation by clicking the globe icon in the bottom of your window and selecting your language. CPATA is the Canadian federal regulator of patent agents and trademark agents, with staff and licensees living and working throughout our vast and free nation. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land we call Canada as the traditional and ancestral territory of many Indigenous peoples, people who have lived on and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us, and for those who have gone before us. We respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant communities. Today and every day, we acknowledge this and offer our appreciation for living and working on this beautiful land. By offering this land acknowledgement, we remind ourselves that we live in a land of great diversity and that we are accountable for our relationships with all who live here. So I'll give you some updates before we get into the formal part of our agenda. During our meeting today, we will hear updates from the CPATA staff on consultations with licensees and stakeholders around the apprenticeship model for licensure and the development of the professional foundation's competency profile. This summer, I was pleased to meet with the IPIC chair and CEO who were visiting Alberta. They kindly introduced me to leaders in the Alberta IP community, and I met with the Business Leadership Technology Group, a group of patent and trademark agents in Alberta. Next week, I'll be attending the IPIC annual conference in Newfoundland, along with our CEO and registrar, Judith Straczynski, and Director of Registration and Education, Deputy Registrar, Jen Slobodkin, as well as Dana Dragomir, CPATA's Director of Communications, and Board Director, Andrew Currier. Judah and Jen will provide an update from CPATA and will also hold a roundtable at the conference to hear different perspectives on apprenticeships and pathways into the profession. We're looking forward to the conference and invite anyone attending to come and chat with us. I'm honored to congratulate Board Director Andrew Currier on the publication of the latest edition of Patent Law Textbook, Canadian Patent Law 5th edition, co-authored by Andrew and Stephen J. Perry. Andrew, I know you'll be celebrating with a launch soon. Please know we admire and deeply respect your achievement in releasing this important IP education resource. And we're delighted that this edition includes a chapter dedicated to professional regulation and CPATA. So thank you for that. As it's back to school for many at this time of year, we're on theme, as today we're going to hear an update from Deputy Registrar on the first administration of the new qualifying exams for patent agents and trademark agents. As a reminder, CPATA refreshed the qualifying exams as part of its competency initiative to support access to the professions and enhance public access to a robust body of competent and ethical practitioners. We could not have done this without the participation of many licensees who contributed their expertise and understanding of the professions to the project. So thank you to all of you. We wish all the best to the trainees who are writing the skills exams this fall, including the trademark agent trainees who wrote their exams this week. Congratulations on reaching this high endeavor. As a reminder, CPATA's board meeting materials are published on the website in both English and French, where they're accessible to the public prior to the meeting. Recordings of each meeting are also available on the website. And now let's turn to today's agenda. We have called the meeting to order, so the first thing on our agenda is to ask for any conflicts of interest. So I would ask board members to declare if they have any conflicts regarding any matters on the agenda.
Hi, Bridget here. I would like to declare conflict. I will be recusing myself from the committee appointment portion of today's meeting, as I understand that I was nominated to be appointed to the governance committee.
Thank you, Brigitte. That will be perfect. It'll be great for you to recuse yourself at that time. Thank you. Any other conflicts?
None.
Okay, thank you. With none being declared, I'll go on to approval of the agenda. So I'll ask board members to approve the agenda as presented, or if anyone has any additions or deletions, please let me know and we can consider them. All right, seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Karima has moved and Tom has seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion has carried. Thank you. All right, next we will approve the minutes. So the motion is, be it resolved that the minutes of the June 13, 2024 board meeting are approved. So could I have someone make that motion?
Iris.
Eris? Perfect. Eris and Brigitte has seconded. So that motion is now on the table. I'll open this item for discussion. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Any amendments or anything to the minutes? No, it looks like no discussion. So I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the motion for the minutes. All right, I see all in favor. Any opposed? All right, that motion too is carried. Thank you. The next section of our agenda is to receive the reports from all of our committees. So as you know, CPATA's committees play a vital role in our regulatory initiatives. Each committee has a unique function as described in the reports. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider committee recommendations presented to the board from time to time for approval and to otherwise meet our fiduciary oversight duties by receiving regular reports from each committee. So our committee reports will be the Investigations Committee by Victoria Rees, our General Counsel, Professional Regulation, the Discipline Committee, also by Victoria, Registration Committee by Jen Slobodkin, Deputy Registrar, the Governance Committee by Tom Conway, Committee Chair, and the Audit and Risk Committee by Sean Walker, our CFO, and Judith Straczynski, CEO and Registrar. So let's go to you, Victoria, for the Investigations Committee report.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Welcome, everybody. And to those who are listening online, it's great to have you join us. While it may, summer may be a quieter time for some, it is often the case that that is not the case for professional responsibility, and the work picks up. And I can't explain why. Maybe it's the heat and humidity and everybody's cranky. I don't know. But as you'll see from the Investigations Committee, Discipline Committee, and Professional Responsibility Program reports, the past 3 months have been active. Now, this is not unexpected, and the activity level hasn't reached the point where it's presenting or creating any budgetary challenges. So I want to reassure you about that. So the Investigations Committee met in July and said farewell and thank you to two extremely dedicated members that we had right from the outset in 2021. And that was Sanjay Gurachorn, a lawyer and trademark agent, and Herman Van Omen, a lawyer and experienced regulator and adjudicator. And since both joined in 2001, they helped create the PR program as it is today. So we thank them very much for their service. We were also very happy to welcome the 5 new members that the board appointed in June, 2 licensees and 3 non-licensees. And their training began in July and it continued at the meeting that was held yesterday. So the Investigations Committee has now gone from 5 to 8 members. And we're happy to say that the skills matrix for this committee is very well covered now. For purposes of this board's role in overseeing the complaints and discipline processes, there are numerous indicators for you that the systems are working very well. And I just thought I would highlight some of those. So the registrar has begun dismissing complaints that are either outside CPATA's jurisdiction or are without merit. And there have been 3 to date, and this makes the process for complaints management more efficient overall by these not having to go to the Investigations Committee. The Investigations Committee itself is moving through investigations in a fair, thorough, transparent, risk-focused, efficient, and effective manner using highly qualified external investigators when appropriate. And we've seen recently the criticisms leveled at law societies when there appear to be inordinate delays in the investigations process, potentially leading to increased public harm. And it's important to be mindful of the need to balance thoroughness with timeliness. And the Investigations Committee is doing this very well. The committee had its first matter requiring use of its authority under Section 37.1 of the Act to suspend a member where it was necessary to do so in the public interest. And the suspended lawyer and trademark agent is Singa Bui, who, with her husband and law partner, Nicholas Cartel, have been the subject of much media attention. And Mr. Cartel entered into a consensual undertaking not to engage in practice, among other things, and there was public notice to this effect. The Investigations Committee followed the Act and its processes and policies to the letter. The parties were given advance notice, even though not required, and the public is now better protected. The Investigations Committee dealt with its first request for appeal of a registrar's decision to dismiss a complaint, and this is an important check and balance in the system. The role of the committee is to evaluate whether the registrar's decision was reasonable. And in this case, they determined that it was, and they upheld the dismissal. At its meeting yesterday, the Investigations Committee continued training for the new members by, rather than just delivering oral reports on ongoing matters, actually reviewing the chronology of how the committee investigated the matters and got to this point, sort of a post-mortem on these matters, so that the new committee members could understand how decisions are made and how the system operates. They also considered a breach of undertaking in an ongoing matter. Importantly, the Investigations Committee survived its first formal procedural challenge by way of a decision through a judicial review process filed by Professor Andrew Olkowski against patent agent Ted Yu. And Professor Olkowski's complaint was really the first one that came through to us from CPO in 2021. And the complaint was thoroughly investigated by the Investigations Committee and dismissed, with advice, which is now public, to the licensee about best practices when dealing with self-represented individuals. Professor Olkowski filed a motion for judicial review with the federal court, and the court released its decision last month, which was copied to the board as soon as it was released, dismissing the motion and commenting positively on the fairness and reasonableness of the Investigations Committee's investigation and written decision. Additionally, the Investigations Committee referred the matter of Imran Siddiqui to the Discipline Committee in 2023, and then engaged through counsel in months of negotiations in an effort to achieve an agreed statement of facts and joint recommendation on penalty. While the committee was fully prepared to proceed to a hearing, based on the evidence, it was clear that a negotiated resolution would be in the public interest, and this was achieved and approved by the discipline panel on August 20th, 24. Their written decision will be filed in due course. Because that matter was concurrently recorded and viewable on YouTube, I'm able to provide you this information. So these are all signs of a system that's working well for the public or licensees, and in enhancing the reputation of CPATA as a trustworthy, transparent, and rigorous professional regulator. I'd be happy to take any questions about those reports or this report that I just provided.
It's fantastic, Victoria. I love the way you present. You just make this all so come to life and so interesting. So thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Any questions for Victoria?
No questions, Madam Chair, but just a comment, if I may. It appears from your report that if there are any lingering doubts that these professions required, professional regulation, I think we are seeing a clear answer to that question, in that, there are bad things that are happening with limited numbers of people within the profession, and it's good to see that our processes are catching that. and addressing them. So congratulations on a job well done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Steve, did you want to make a comment? Yes, please.
Thank you again, Victoria, for the report. That was excellent. I agree. And just two maybe comments or observations because of the costs. As a litigator, I can appreciate the costs that are associated with these kinds of proceedings. The first observation I would make, and I appreciate when Justice Furlanato came out and said, look, this is the first time this is kind of got before a court, so I'm not going to make any order as to cost. I understand that. But I think going down the road, I think in terms of our council, we should be thinking about trying to secure cost awards. Because I think, I'm sure there's going to be legitimate cases where we're in front of a judge, I'm sure. But it's also, ripe for abuse if you get a self-represented litigant who's got no costs, and we're obviously incurring the costs of law firms. So I just make that observation. I understand Justice Furlanato's view in this decision, but I would hope going down the road that our council would be instructed to seek costs, because I do think you'll have to have something to stop people bringing, frivolous appeals and this kind of thing. Second, and we can talk about the budget later on, I'm sure we will, but I'm sure that our council were very fine council. I also assume that they were not inexpensive. And I wonder, with the concern that maybe we will see self-litigants just outright appealing because they have an appeal as of right, should we be chatting about who represents us and fees? And I only throw this out that I know that there are a lot of firms that we come in contact with. Some of us work for firms and that kind of thing. I wonder if we have the benefit of getting good but inexpensive counsel going forward. And again, I don't know what we paid the current counsel, so that's not any kind of a suggestion that they were too expensive. I just put that out there that there may be an opportunity for the board to take advantage of the fact that many of us are in contact with lawyers or working with lawyers or working with law firms. Anyways, that's my two comments. Thank you.
So Steve, that's a great comment. And I think that when we come to discussing the budget and we've got those numbers in front of us, et cetera, at that time, that's a super good point to bring up again. On the sort of the first area regarding costs, Victoria, did you have, I know Tom's got his hand up as well, and so does Judah. So just, I guess, do you want me to take them first?
No, I would just add, if I might, that for the cases where we have engaged in settlement discussions, that matters that are heard by our discipline committee, we have sought and recovered and are recovering costs. This one was out of our control, but there is no question that wherever we can, we are seeking costs.
Good to know, Victoria. Thank you. Steve, were you saying something? Your mic was off. Were you saying something?
No, I was just thanking Victoria for her answer to my question.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thank you. Tom, I see your hand is up, and Judah, your hand is up. So Tom was first. Is that okay, Judah? We'll go to Tom. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ruth. This is, I think Steve's remarks present to me, as the new chair of the governance committee, a really good illustration of a question that we need to ask ourselves all the time when we're doing our work. The first is so for example, the idea that we should always be seeking our legal costs, I think is a very good comment from a director on policy. That's a policy that I think we should. If we don't already have it, I think it's something that I think everybody could get behind. We should try to recover our legal costs whenever we can. However, the second comment about perhaps we should have a discussion about who should be, which legal counsel we should engage and so on and so forth, I would respectfully suggest that that's not really our bailiwick. I would strongly be of the view, I am strongly of the view that is a kind of a decision that should be made by the CEO and staff in the normal course of operating the college. I think we venture onto very thin and precarious ice if we are trying to have some input or influence in who the college will retain to represent it at the board level, particularly since many of us are lawyers. And I'm not sure that that's an appropriate thing for us to be doing. Certainly, if we're asked, I think we should obviously provide our input. But I would suggest that we start to cross the line from good governance into meddling.
I think fair comment, Tom. And I think perhaps I wasn't sufficiently clear. I have no interest personally, and I agree with you completely in terms of the board, in terms of being involved in the retention of council. No, my only comment was perhaps I should have talked more bluntly. I suspect we may have the opportunity of, for example, having pro bono representation, depending on whom we ultimately retain. I just throw that out there to whomever makes the decision, that we may have some options that might be attractive from a representation standpoint. That's all I have in terms of comments.
Yeah, no, but I think this is. I think I'm not trying to quelch or quash the discussion. I think we should have that discussion. All I'm saying is let's just be careful about what lines we may be crossing. That's all I'm suggesting. Okay.
Oh, both good points. Judah, you had a thought.
Yeah, so we actually do have an open roster where people who are interested in working with CPATA are free to submit. We promoted this in early 2023 to expand those who might be interested in providing services to us, and we do have many who did come forward, and it's an open call, and so we can send it out again in a future newsletter so that those who might be licensees interested in participating in various aspects, be they lawyers for particular litigation matters or agents interested in some of our work, it never hurts to remind people of the sorts of work we do. I can tell you we run a very tight ship when it comes to litigation spend, and we also use lower level associate and clerks wherever possible. And we have strong working relationships with certain firms already doing discipline work where we are seeing exceptional value for money in terms of how they are managing the files, and the invoices are approved not just by Victoria, but by me before they go out. There is a tendency at times to, on the one hand, either seek this work for remuneration or pro bono. I can tell you we've had no offers of pro bono to date, but as a matter of policy and professionalism, our approach to date has been that when people work for CPATA, they work for CPATA as professions. And I think that if the board wishes to engage in a discussion about that, we can. But I can tell you that my own personal preference, given that we do have budget and given that this is high-end specific work, where truly we are looking for work for these sorts of matters, it's vital that they understand professional regulation and the case law from different tribunals in order to assist us. Typically, those are paid retainers, and that's typically, as a matter of procurement policy, other regulators who have been offered pro bono services typically pay for these services. I think that given unmet legal needs and unmet IP needs out there, there may be other places where pro bono hours may be better spent. So I just put that out there generally, but I can be quite firm with you that in terms of our spend, we are getting tremendous value on the hourly rate basis that we have been able to negotiate with council.
That's great. Thank you. So it looks like we'll have some other things we might talk about when it's budget time. So that's great. We are on note of time. We are running behind our schedule now. I just want to get us back into some more committee reports. Don't want to cut off this discussion, but Victoria does have more to share with us. And we also have 3 other reports coming in behind Victoria. So Victoria, back over to you now to talk about discipline committee.
So those have been very helpful comments, and I
Totally.
appreciate the discussion.
Me too.
The discipline committee report is much briefer because much of what the committee does is public. And so the committee has been working through 3 ongoing matters referred to them by the Investigations Committee in 2023. The pre-hearing conference process has been very effective in streamlining the hearings process and encouraging agreements on fact and or penalty where appropriate. A panel of the discipline committee, as I said before, heard the matter of Imran Siddiqui on August 20th and rendered an oral decision approving the agreed statement of facts and proposed penalty, and its written decision will follow. Pre-hearing conferences are ongoing in the matter of Matthew O'Day, and a hearing date has not yet been set. And the matter of Eric Fincham will be heard on October the 2nd and can be viewed via YouTube, as is the case with all proceedings. And the discipline committee also continues to hold, in this case, this year, 3 committee meetings of the whole, of all of them, in order to discuss their experiences as they work in panels, come together and consider sort of ways to continuously improve their policies and procedures. So that's that. If there are any questions.
That's great, Victoria. Any questions or comments for Victoria on the report from the discipline committee? Okay, seeing none. The next committee report is the registration committee. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a very, very short update for you today, and then I'll talk more a little bit later about the skills matrix when we get to that section. But the committee has not formally met since the last report to the board. They will be meeting in December to review the Professional Foundations Competency Profile Report and Draft, as well as the pass mark for the Trademark Agent Skills Exam. So you'll have a more comprehensive report at the March board meeting, but they're just focusing on recruiting for the patent agent position right now. And that's all for registration committee. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jen. Given that the committee hasn't met since our last meeting, I appreciate your brief update. That's great. Any questions for Jen? And as Jen mentioned, we will be talking about the skills matrix later in our agenda. Okay, great. Next committee is the governance committee. So, Mr. Conway, chair of the governance committee, over to you.
I first of all want to mute my microphone. Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee's report is in the materials. I'm sure you've all read it, so I'll go as quickly as I can. First of all, I wanted to again formally thank our former director, Leonora Polka, who made a big contribution to this committee. We do have a motion to replace her on the committee. And I think we will be dealing with that at some point during the meeting, but so I won't deal with that right now. And secondly, I wanted to again thank Karima for her excellent leadership as the chair of the governance committee. I have been so impressed with the work that she's done that I have converted from a governance skeptic, good governance skeptic, to a convert, and I'm now evangelizing good governance wherever I can go. I think she has demonstrated, certainly to me, that tending the garden, making sure that our processes are efficient, that they allow all of our stakeholders the opportunity, particularly the board members, the opportunity to engage in productive discussion about the issues, is really key to our success. So thank you very much, Karima, for your efforts at apostolizing, if I can continue with that theme, because you've done a really impressive job. So very quickly then, we have from, as you'll note from the committee, we are working on some recommendations for the registration committee. We have some vacancies there, so we'll be working on that the next couple of months. We are working on improving the board evaluation process. We have one right now that we use, and the question that we're going to be mooting is whether it's adequate, whether we need to balance it a little bit more. But we'll be looking at that in the next couple next couple of meetings. We are also going to be engaging in refining our committee governance processes, and we'll be trying to provide you with some recommendations, or at least some things to think about in terms of committee lengths and how we appoint people to those committees. Finally, I wanted to discuss with you our plans for the CEO evaluation. We have been so excited with Judah's arrival, and he's been working so hard, and we've been trying to keep everything up and running, that we haven't yet really put our mind to having a consistent CEO evaluation. As you will know, as directors, the only employee that really that has a direct reporting line to the board is the CEO. So the relationship between the board and the CEO is super important. I have seen situations in the past where if the board and the CEO have a disconnect, it can really lead to almost existential challenges. So we want to avoid that. This year, what we've decided to do is to adopt an ad hoc process. And I'm not saying that in a way that's derogatory. It's just that it's not the process I think that's ideal going forward. But we are using in part our leftovers, if I can call it that, with Boyden. Boyden had agreed to do a CEO integration report for us. So we're using that as a way of kind of getting some touchstones, or some touching base with a few key people to see how Judah's integration has gone. That may provide us with some valuable insights. And then we're going to be relying a lot on Judah's report to us on his progress in moving forward the strategic plan. So it's a bit of an ad hoc process this year, but what we're planning to do, and we've started this now, and this will occupy us for the next little while, is coming up with some recommendations, or again, some things for the board to consider in terms of a go forward process for an ongoing evaluation of the CEO. We don't think it'll be annual, but we'll see as our thinking on this progresses. The idea is that we will want to have an express at the end of the exercise. We will want to have an efficient but very clear set of processes and criteria that we will use to evaluate the CEO's ongoing performance. Again, it's not intended to be critical. It's intended to be a good governance piece that will ensure that any issues that come up get addressed in a timely fashion. We're not anticipating any issues. Judah's been doing, I think everybody agrees, a great job, but we want to make sure that going forward, we have a process in place that ensures that our good governance and our relationship with the CEO continues. So that's my report. I'll welcome any questions or comments that people may have.
Thank you, Tom. And I sure want to echo your kudos to Karima and all she has done to build out the governance frameworks for this organization. We are forever in your debt, Karima. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind words. And I know you're in great hands with Tom.
Thank you. Tom, thank you for stepping into those big shoes. That's great. That's great. Okay, next report is the Audit and Risk Committee. So Sean and Judah, over to you.
Can everybody hear me okay? I'm working on a new system today. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So for the report of the Audit Risk Committee, just as a bit of background, so the Audit Risk Committee, really the purpose is to assist the board in its fiduciary obligations and really oversee the financial management and risk management of the organization. We also review the corporate internal controls, risk management, and then make recommendations to the board on the acceptance of financial statements, the appointment of auditors, and different things like that. And since the last update was provided to the board, the committee has met twice, once in July and then once again in September. with the July meeting focused on the enterprise risk and enterprise and regulatory risk management worksheets and the heat map. We walked through each of the areas in each of the top 10 areas in particular with the committee and reviewed the mitigation strategies that we've put in place, the emergency preparedness around each one, like what would we do if they happened, and what kind of steps are we putting in place to have them not happen. And then you'll notice that the top 4 areas were really around financial risk and cybersecurity. So we'll talk about that a bit more later. Also, the exciting news at the July meeting was when we welcomed Andrew Courier to the committee. Great addition. He's been very engaged and very resourceful and insightful. So it's been a great addition. And we thank him for that. We also reviewed the college's insurance coverage, which we do each year at that meeting. All of our renewals come up in the April-May timeframe, so we try to bring that information as part of the budget to the Audit Risk Committee and then the board each year. And then we walk through each of the policies with the committee so that they were comfortable with where we are. Okay. At the September meeting, we invited the Director of Operations, Andres Diaz, to come and present the emergency preparedness manual that he's been working on developing. So we went through that. It's almost like a 1B to the 1A of the enterprise risk and the regulatory risk. This is like what happens in the event of a major event. So we've been working on like call trees and making sure we have all the contacts in place for each of the various systems that we have. So that is an ongoing, evolving process that we continue to work on. And then, of course, at both meetings, we went through the regular standard information, such as the financial statements. I provide a memo of the happenings that have happened since the previous meeting. We look at the legislative compliance areas to make sure that we're on side with CRA and the various reporting agencies that we've submitted all of our remittances and that the employees are taken care of. And then we've got the next meeting that's upcoming here in October will be the start of the budget for 2025. So I've been working with Judah and the team on a number of high-level assumptions and projections for next year, so we can kind of work on what the expenses are going to look like. And then the next step is to look at the revenue and really looking at the exam revenue and fees that we're going to look at, and also our renewal fees. We're starting to build more scenarios like we did for this year, saying like, if we have the exact same number of licensees next year, what will our revenue look like? If we go up 10% or down %. So we've started those scenarios as well, and those will come to the board at the November 7th meeting. So we look forward to that. Okay. And that's it from the committee side of things. Next step, Ruth, I believe, is to run through just a quick overview of the financial reports.
Yes. Yeah, you bet.
Okay. So there's just a handful, in order to keep it short, there's just a handful of certain items that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. So I'll just quickly run through those. So starting on page 17, the statement of financial position, or balance sheet, as some people know it. Under the asset section, the big number there that we always focus on is cash, of course. So this year we have cash in GICs, or AGIC. Our revenue from licensee renewals was significant enough that we were able to purchase some short-term GICs to kind of put that money aside and earn a bit of interest for this year. You'll see we're about 1.5 million higher this year than last year in cash, and that's due to the large increase in our licensee fee revenue from the increase in the rates that we had imposed in order to try to build the financial reserves, which I'll talk about a bit later. The corresponding number down in the liability section is the deferred revenue. So the way things work is we receive the lion's share of our licensee renewals in February, March, start of April. All that cash gives in up front, and then we recognize it throughout the year as the months go by, so that we're matching our revenue with the timing of expenses. So this 1.5 represents the amount of cash that's been received, but not yet recorded as revenue monthly as we go on. Okay. And then I just want to touch on a few items on page 20, the budget versus actuals. So this is the statement of operations with the budget included. And really it's just a handful of numbers I want to show there. First is the total licensee fee income. You'll see year to date, we're just over $213,000 above budget, which again, as I mentioned, was due to the increase in the fees and the collections. We expect that number to be around $365,000 by the end of the year, which then leads me to my next number, that revenue contingency that we had built into the budget for 2024. We weren't sure how the revenue was going to turn out when we built the budget with the increase in the rates and the fees. So we put in a $100,000 contingency just in case the revenue was lower. So good news is, with the revenue being this high, we're not going to need that contingency money. Down under legal fees, account number 6030 under the expenses, as Victoria talked about earlier, this is our discipline legal fees. You'll see we're under budget, underspent this year to the end of July, about $45,000. What we're seeing is we haven't had as many cases for discipline matters this year, so we've been able to save a bit of money on those legal fees, and we do expect that to continue for the next couple of months till we get to year end. Down under board and committee governance expenses, you'll see we're about $49,000 under budget year to date. That's a timing issue from when we split the budget out over the split flat line across the year. But we still have another event or another in-person meeting coming up in the fall, so that should become more in line with the budget. And then just a couple more items on the next page. The next big area is the staff training. Again, we had budgeted this straight for the year, but as was mentioned, the IPIC conference next week, there's a few of the staff going, and then there's also a senior conference in October that a few people are going to as well. So that's where the staff training will come from. And then the final item is the expense contingency under count 7410. Again, we had built in the contingency not knowing if there's going to be some extraordinary expenses occurred during the year, but so far so good, and everything has been online with budget or close to, so we don't expect to need that as well. So year to date, our revenue over expenses is almost $600,000 better than budget. So that's the $599 in the over budget column. And by the end of the year, we expect that to be around $800,000 compared to a surplus budget of $400,000. So we're looking at about approximately $1.2 million that we're hopeful we'll be able to put into our financial reserves to continue to build those. Okay. And that was the update on the financial statements. Any questions? Please ask.
Questions for Sean? Did you have a question for Sean, Judah?
I just wanted to add that what we're experiencing on some of the expense side is a knock-on effect from not having to take certain cases all the way through to contested hearings. What we're seeing are savings on legal from possible cases that might have needed multi-day hearings. With that, we also have decreased cost on our committee side. I think it's important for the public to understand that when we have committees, some of them are in fact tribunals effectively. And so our discipline committee has not needed to be as engaged, and we had budgeted for those multi-day hearings should they have needed to arise. They're not happening in some of the cases where Victoria and colleagues have managed to negotiate settlements and where we've managed to have matters go through on consent. And so we're seeing some of those savings, but those are areas that will vary from year to year. And we're going to continue to have a little bit of financial uncertainty, or a range, if you will, of possible outcomes that we'll need to budget for. And that will go into our financial planning for next year.
Good. That's great. Thanks for that addition, Judah. So I just want to do a time check here. We are running way behind time, which is okay because we're having a really good, engaging discussion, but I will beg your indulgence that this portion of the meeting will probably go longer, and therefore our in-camera will just be a little bit shorter. So we'll make up for that time, I'm sure, in camera. But what I did want to check, Judah, is you've got translators and there are people online, and our agenda says this meeting will end in 8 minutes, and it won't. So are we okay? That's all right? Okay, perfect. Okay, over to you, Judah, then. Our next agenda item is the program reports and CEO reports. So starting with Victoria, on professional responsibility program report update. To you, Victoria.
Thank you. I won't be too long. Everything I just described under the Investigations Committee and Discipline Committee is part of my job to support, and so that's some of the work of professional responsibility. The ethics inquiries process and the agent conduct inquiry processes have continued to be busy and raising some really thought-provoking questions. So, for example, are there any special ethical considerations when representing a minor? Can C3 trainees work for free? Can a licensee work as an in-house counsel agent at the same time as maintaining a private practice? What do you do when you agree as an agent to act for a husband and wife and their business and then they separate? These are the this range of questions that come in that we both enjoy getting because they're proactive questions where licensees are seeking guidance before errors are made. And we really appreciate that and are glad to be providing that in a proactive way. In each case, we provide a response in the form of general guidance with reference to the applicable rules under the code, and we've had a lot of positive feedback from licensees about this. We've seen a small increase in complaints this year. We have 2 matters ongoing for consideration, and 2 others were dismissed by the registrar. The CEO will talk about this in more detail, but of significant concern was a matter that arose in August where 15 separate licensees filed complaints with us about what was determined to be a fraudulent phishing scam, PHI-SHING, involving email communications directly to trademark clients, urging them to use this particular company and this attorney to protect their trademarks for a fee, of course. And so, as I say, Judah will report on this in more detail, and this represents the majority of the 18 unauthorized practice complaints that we received in this reporting period. What I did was to make sure that every one was responded to within 24 to 48 hours, and that we provided some specific information, some risk management information back to the agents to be able to provide to their clients. And we took the unusual step of putting a notice on our website. And I note that CPO and IPIC did the same. And so we really worked in concert to try and help the public and agents understand what this situation was. Finally, I'm really excited about a project underway with staff and volunteers, a couple who are on here today, to create 3 recorded code of conduct education programs. These programs in particular will focus on the fundamental canon of integrity and professionalism and what it means to be a professional. And then a series of 2 on the fundamentals of communications and ethics in relation to communications. These are areas where we're seeing issues in ethics and discipline. So these are going to be produced in English and in French, and we're grateful to the licensees who volunteered to assist Judah, Dana, and me with production and content. This is another way that we're trying to make licensees have the resources they need to get things right first. And these recorded education programs are also going to be a part of a cache, I guess, of searchable practice management resources that we're also starting to develop to provide proactive support and information to our licensees. And you have the report for the other details. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Victoria. Another great report. Any questions or comments for Victoria? Excited about the projects you're talking about. It'll be great to hear more as they progress. Thank you. All right. The next report is professional development and competency. And over to you, Jen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This update will be a little bit lengthier than the registration committee update, just a fair warning there. We've been really busy in the areas of education and registration, as we usually are. We've been working on implementing recommendations from the Fair Registration Practices Self-Assessment Report, as well as building and testing an application portal to streamline the application process. There's been an uptick in Class 3 trainee applications as the deadline to be registered as a trainee to write the winter knowledge exams is the end of October. Speaking of exams, we've had a lot of movement in that area. All of the samples for the skills exams have been completed and published on the website. That included 2 components for trademark and 4 components for patent, including the translations that gave us 12 sample exam forms. And then if you add the 2024 exam forms we have worked on since the beginning of the year, that's about 24 full exam forms that we have been working on just on the skills exam side alone. A few questions from each of the samples were configured on the exam platform so that candidates could get a sense of how everything functions and navigation on the platform worked before exam time. We presented a candidate orientation for the trademark agent skills exam on September 3rd, and we'll be presenting the patent agent skills exam orientation on October the 1st. All 18 skills exam advisory group members attended the evaluator training session that was facilitated by our psychometrician from Principia on September 12th, and that helped us prepare for the marking of the skills exams, which are actually starting today on the trademark side. This week, as Madam Chair mentioned at the beginning of the board meeting, we successfully administered the inaugural trademark agent skills exam. 46 candidates wrote the exams over the last few days, and now we are moving into scoring. The patent agent skills exams will be written at the end of October, and registration for that exam closes today. On the knowledge exam side, we are wrapping up the development, review, translation, and translation review of over 180 multiple choice patent knowledge items and over 180 multiple choice trademark knowledge items that were developed over the spring and summer this year to support the 2025 knowledge exam forms. Next steps will include form assembly, pilot testing, and form approval in the coming months. As a reminder, starting in 2025, we are offering 2 administrations of the knowledge exams, one in the winter and one in the spring, so that candidates have at least 2 chances to demonstrate competency and establish their eligibility for the skills exams in the fall. Thank you again to all of the agents who have worked with us over the last several months on both the knowledge and the skills exams. On the professional foundations competency profile side, over the spring and summer, we worked with agents and our consultant to develop the professional foundations competency profile. After undergoing translation and translation review, we did some pre-validation consultation with the board and CPATA's committees. And at the beginning of September, we launched the large-scale validation survey, where we are asking agents to rate the competencies and performance criteria by both importance and frequency. This will give us the data needed to finalize the profile and identify which competencies and skills are the most critical for patent agents and trademark agents in practice. The survey closes on October 10th, and the profile will go to the registration committee at their December meeting for consideration, and then to the board at their March 2025 meeting. For pathways, our consultation on pathways to licensure is still underway and will close at the beginning of October. Thank you to all of the licensees who've participated in focus groups, as well as CPO and ICID, and have completed the survey and made written submissions. We'll be reviewing the findings of this consultation in the coming months, and there's another focus group that will happen with IPIC in October after their conference. So that is the update from registration and education. I'm happy to take any questions.
That's fantastic, Jen. This is so exciting, such an exciting time. Building all of this good framework and infrastructure. It's amazing. Thoughts, questions, comments for Jen? Well, just keep being a rock star, Jen.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. Okay, great. Now over to you. Our illustrious CEO will provide his report.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I will be quick because so much has been covered by the exceptional staff that I get to work with every day. Jen's highlighted 2 of 3 policy consultations that we'll be doing through the fall. So it's a busy time, and we continue to rely on the profession The first one that's ongoing and that has been wonderfully running is around apprenticeships. We've had nearly 40 people participate in focus groups so far. We're going to be meeting, and we actually have 2 tables running where we're going to get feedback from individual licensees at the IPIC conference next week. Then IPIC will be providing some of their members to come and participate in a focus group, at which point we'll have concluded this first range of this first outreach initiative, and we'll be summarizing findings for the board in due course so that we can talk about where this project goes next. We also have the professional foundations work, which is going fantastically. We've got lots of people completing the surveys related to that. And for anyone who may watch this on replay, just know that both of those are currently open. And so we'd encourage people who are interested in participating in either the professional foundations validation efforts or to provide their input around apprenticeship and future of the professions. By all means, there are ways to get involved. Later this fall, we're also going to consult about new questions we'll be adding as part of our annual report process. Already, we ask basic questions: who you are, what you do, where you work. We've surveyed the profession in the past, and we got great buy-in from the profession and a great response rate. And we're going to be taking some of those questions that went more to better understand the type of work that licensees are doing, where there may be areas of particular expertise that they have on a technical side, the languages in which they're able to provide professional services. These added questions, we'll be asking both voluntary and mandatory questions. The voluntary questions will go more around demographic and personal identifying information that will be kept in aggregate, but that will help us get a sense of demographic trends and the future state of the profession. The other questions will also help us understand the supply side for patent and trademark agent work and help us understand more about where service is available. We have questions that we'll be putting to the profession just to make sure that we've got this about right and welcome input. Some of the things we're looking at are designed to make our register more consumer-centric. So, for example, in the US, you can go to the USPTO website and not only find out who's an agent, but also see whether they're open to receiving new work. That's really helpful for a client who otherwise might do a search and then call people up. And certainly anyone who's been in the professional services know of those cold calls out of nowhere. And sometimes if you're busy or your practice is run in a group where you're simply not supposed to be taking on new clients and new retainers, it's an unfortunate phone call where you have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help. Go to this resource, to which they say, oh, that's where I got your name from. So we're going to try to streamline this and enhance the user-friendly, searchable items that we'll have on our system so that if agents have particular expertise or speak other languages or are open to work, we can have all of that in our framework on the go forward. So I'm really looking forward to those outreach initiatives. The report that I've presented to you also talks about the updates in professional responsibility. I'm not going to say more other than that with respect to the unauthorized practice matter. This is one of those ones that will come along from time to time and where all parties need to put their oars in and go in the same direction. And we were grateful that IPIC not only alerted us to the issue as Victoria was receiving email after email, but also they issued an alert to their own members. CPO issued an alert on this one, and we issued an alert. And so we were all on the same channel, and we were checking what we were all conveying to make sure there was a consistency of message to help the public. Because at the end of the day, this one was an area where we're all responsible to try to raise the concern and make sure that that the public risk is minimized to the greatest extent possible. You'll see also that in this CEO report, a couple of other pieces that I'm not going to get into detail about, but one is that we've secured intellectual property protection for CPATA itself. And that was an important step, not just to manage our risk, because the last thing you want is a reputational harm where somebody comes to say to us that our logo infringes theirs or that our acronym is used by another organization, but it also allows us to make sure, for example, for unauthorized practice matters, that we have one more arrow in our that's available to us should we wish to say not only are you engaged in unauthorized practice, but you are using some of our intellectual property. And so it just strengthens our position out there and enables an intellectual property regulator to make sure that it's, in fact, making sure that it has its proper intellectual property available to itself. So we were thrilled to be able to do that piece. Lastly, in the CEO report, this was more of an FYI, an opportunity to look under the hood a little bit for directors who don't live and breathe regulation every day. There are lots of systems that we have in place, and there are lots of approaches that we take to try to reduce friction with licensees wherever we can, but it takes work. And so on our renewals, for example, we play a chase game where licensees may have inadvertently, at times perhaps, sort of, how can I say this? Sometimes less inadvertently delayed on renewals, failed to provide certain key information. And technically, we were in a position where we could have suspended a whole bunch of people for this, but we try not to. These are administrative suspensions. They're annoying for everyone. And so we try to act in the utmost best faith and go and remind people and try to engage with them proactively. And we were able to go through and do that work, and kudos to the team for doing so. I see this as a form of public service, as a licensee service, and it's an area where there's relatively low risk to having those not quite completed yet. And so we tried to do something to make this easier for our licensees. But I wanted staff efforts here to be known to the board, because this is one of those areas where we don't have to do it this way, but we think it's the right way to do it. It is an operational task, but it's a big one. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more of the flavor of the type of work and how we work to try to be right touch for the public and for licensees as well. So with that, Madam Chair, I will pass back to you, but that is the CEO report.
Great, Judah. Any thoughts to share with Judah? Any questions on the CEO report? Okay, Judah, I think your report was thorough, and thank you for the written report as well as the additional color commentary in your verbal report. That's excellent. So next up, we have the Registration Committee Skills Matrix. So we do have a motion that I will read into the record. But first, Jen, is there anything you'd like to speak with the board about before we put that motion on the table?
Yes, please. I'll just give a very brief background, and then I'll point out a text change that is reflected in the French version, but not on the English version. So I wanted the board to be aware of that for when they're making their motion. Just a bit of background, the current version of the matrix was implemented back when CPATA came into force and required some updates for consistency in language. Some of these changes included updating references to bylaws, reflecting language changes in other CPATA documents like the regulatory objectives, and then rearranging some of the areas in the knowledge and attributes section. So the change that wasn't reflected on the English version, but is in the French version, is referencing the Indigenous context. So it was made more specific from Indigenous context to the intersection between existing IP laws and the protection of Indigenous knowledge and cultural expressions. So that was the section that was just revised to be a little bit more specific. Otherwise, those were the changes. I don't think any of them were substantive.
That makes good sense, Jen. So then is it appropriate for me to read the motion as it's printed in the English version of the agenda into the record? Yes. The motion itself, I think, is still good, right? Okay,
I think so.
Great.
Yes.
I'm going to read the motion. I'll ask someone to move and second it. Then once it's on the table, I'll open it for discussion. So the motion, be it resolved that the skills matrix for the registration committee be approved as per the revised version appearing in the board meeting package. Could I have someone so move? It is, thank you. And Scott, seconded, thank you. That motion is now open for discussion. And we have Jen right here to help us if we have any questions. Okay, seeing no, it looks like no requirement for further discussion over and above the information that was provided in the package and in your introduction, Jen, so that's great. With that being said, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Thank you. The next item is a motion regarding a committee appointment. And as you had noted earlier, Brigitte, you're going to just excuse yourself, and Judah will just send you a text when we're finished discussing, and you can come on back. So, see ya. Okay, Judah, would you mind please reading the motion into the record? I'll get someone to move and second it, and then we can open it for discussion.
Be it resolved that Brigitte Chan is appointed to the Governance Committee.
Could I have someone move that? Tom and Karima seconded. Perfect. So before I call for a vote, this was sent to the board in advance with a request that if anyone had anything that they'd like to discuss on it, that there would be an opportunity to do so in camera, and just to let us know. Since we didn't hear any discussion, or no one had let us know that there was anything we needed to discuss in camera, we felt comfortable bringing this forward to the board meeting. So with that being said, I will now open for any discussion or questions before calling for a vote. Okay, seeing none, we'll move right to voting then. All in favor of the motion to appoint Brigitte to the Governance Committee? Perfect. Any opposed? That motion is carried. Judah, maybe you could just let Brigitte know to come on back. All right, so I don't see Brigitte back yet. So maybe you want to email her too, Judah? Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and go on, and Brigitte can join us again when she's able to. So other business is now next on our agenda. No one had reached out to suggest that there was any other business, and same with when we talked about the agenda in the beginning. So I'm going to assume there's no other business, but do raise your hand if you, okay, I think we're good there. We will now adjourn the public meeting of the CPATA board, and we thank everyone for joining us for this meeting, and we will move in camera. I'm going to suggest that the board take a 10-minute wellness break, and we will rejoin for an in-camera meeting. It is now 11:15 my time. You can translate like that all into your time. So we'll get back together at 11:25. Okay, thank you.